to clam up and look sharp when he saw the dark silhouette appear atop the panel fence 50 yards down the line. He slapped Robinson's shoulder and pointed. "Climber! There!" They tossed their smokes and unslung their rifles as a clamor rose from the other side. Now a spotlight raked along the top of the wall, splashing the climbing figure in a sudden bright pool. Not a soldier after all, Morse saw, but a worker making a break for it. Morse could hear the GDR soldiers shouting. He heard the pounding of boots on brick. He realized that he was holding his breath for the guy coming over, hoping he'd make it. Then came the sudden hard crack of rifle fire. Morse heard a single shot, followed by half a dozen more. Mists of blood drifted in the spotlight beam as bullets struck the fleeing worker in the back, punching shreds of fabric from the front of his coat as they exited his body. The worker twitched as though stung by wasps. Morse heard a final shot and the worker jerked upright. Then he pitched forward, limp as a rag. By the time they reached him, the worker's body steamed in the cold, cruelly tangled in the snarl of barbed wire along the base of the panel fence. His open eyes stared at nothing. PFC Robinson said, "I think he's a gunner." "Good observation, Private," Morse said. "Now help me get the poor bastard out of there." They reslung their rifles and went to work, peeling back the stiff, cold wire as best they could using only their gloves, until Morse finally gave up and radioed for support and a pair of cutters. He was lighting a new smoke when Robinson, still crouched with the body amid the toothy brambles, said, "Whoa, Top, look at this." Morse looked. Snowflakes had already stopped melting on the worker's blood-spattered face. He thought, "At least close the man's eyes, Robinson, for crying out loud." Then the private pulled some kind of strap from beneath the worker's bullet-tattered coat, stood to his feet, and handed Morse a dented metal disc about the size of a hubcap. "What's this?" he said. It was a film container, that much Morse could see, with bullet holes in it, and Robinson's bloody thumbprints on the metal, along with a crusty, faded filing label bearing a single word, Secretny. Peering at the label over Morse's shoulder, Robinson said, "How's your German, Top?" "That isn't German," Morse told him, calling upon the few minutes of language training he'd managed to stay awake for back at Bragg. "It's Russian." "Yeah? What's it say?" Morse glanced at the body of the worker in the wire as the first growling jeep from checkpoint arrived. He rubbed the label on the battered film can with his thumb and thought, "I'll be damned." "It says classified," he finally answered, though Robinson had already run off toward the jeep, and there was nobody but the dead man to hear him. Part 1. Resurrecting the Wolf. Chapter 1. December 1961, Washington, D.C. 10 minutes into the class period, David W. Toland realized that no matter what he said, no matter how he said it, there was no way on God's green earth he was going to be able to make his job sound interesting to a bunch of fourth graders. "Have you ever met Marilyn Monroe?" the girl with the braids and the freckles wanted to know. "Is she nice in person?" Patiently, David explained again that as Director of Preservation for the National Film Archive at the Library of Congress, he did not himself make movies, and only rarely did he meet the people who did. A stocky, tow-headed boy in the back piped up, "My granddad was in the Air Force with Clark Gable." This provoked such a reaction from the rest of the class that David wondered if the tow-headed boy had some prior record of telling tall tales. The other boys all scoffed or called baloney. Even the freckled girl rolled her eyes and said, "Oh, he was not either." Through all of this, David couldn't help noticing that the class teacher, one Miss Megan Jenkins, slim and pretty, perhaps 5 years his junior, didn't exactly seem to be rushing to his rescue. Instead, she leaned against the wall behind her desk, biting back a grin while David sweated bullets near the Christmas tree at the front of her class. He had to do something to right this ship, and quick. So Toland abandoned the lecture he'd planned about film stock and substrates, the deleterious effects of mold. He said to the tow-headed boy, "Clark Gable, that's interesting. What's her name, son?" "Martin Elroy," the tow-headed boy said. "Okay, Martin Elroy, here's something you might not know about Clark Gable." The class settled down a notch, waiting to see what he had up his sleeve. David said, "While he was in the Air Force with your granddad, this would have been during World War II, Gable made recruitment films, that is, short movies designed to attract young men to the war effort. It so happens that my office has restored and archived those particular recruitment films starring Clark Gable. You might think of them as pages in the scrapbook of our nation's history." David spread his hands. "And that's film preservation in a nutshell."